it's Jane here. I'm back in the kitchen, but this time I will not be alone because I'm surely to be joined by 3 other familiar faces. The reason being is that a short while ago on the Jane's Allotment Facebook page, I asked the subscribers if they had any general questions or gardening queries that they might like us to help them with. And the response was just wonderful. So I thought, what better way to respond to them than to invite 3 other YouTube gardeners along to share their vast amount of knowledge and experience with us all, to help tackle those questions head on. So I'm going to stop now and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Enjoy.
So hi, I'm Rue and I'm from Rue's Life. I live on a 10-acre small holding and I grow at home. I've got polytunnel and a little vegetable plot. We've been here for 4 years, but before that I had other houses where I could grow and I had an allotment as well.
Wow, so you've always been growing then, Rue, it sounds like.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. How about you, Erica?
I live in Wales, so I'm from the YouTube channel Erica's This Welsh Garden. I have been gardening on and off for around about 16 years now, but here in Wales I've got a large garden that needs a lot of work and I've got 2 allotments as well.
So you've got your hands busy and a young family, Erica, so yeah, hats off to you, hats off to you. And Liz, how about you?
Hello, yes, I live in South East Wales on a micro small holding where we grow around 80 to 85% of all our food and drink.
And you don't just grow your own, you do veg boxes as well, because you're that efficient at growing this. So yeah, and me, if you know me, I've been in Staffordshire now for 20 odd years, but grown in gardens sort of all my life really. But just the last 6 years I've just taken hold a couple of years ago of my second allotment, and that's where I've been able to really sort of explore allotment gardening a lot more. So yeah, that's a little bit about us. And I think actually that might be the first question covered, because we had a question from Pat Reynolds, and she actually says, how long have you been gardening? So I've sort of answered that for myself. I remember being in the garden with my parents as a child and being interested in what they were doing and sowing radishes and picking raspberries and that sort of thing. And any property we have had, I've made a growing space, whether it's been made out of pots or, you know, reclaiming a little bit of the land next door, which I probably shouldn't tell you. Yeah, but I've always had that interest. So yeah, I would say it's sort of been lifelong really. But Liz, how about you?
Started my interest when I was a very small child, when my father taught me how to, well, I think he was showing me how snapdragons, and you squeeze the side of them. Yeah. What I actually did was pop all the flowers of his fuchsias. I got my first garden when I was in my early 20s, so I guess I've been gardening for 40-ish years.
Yeah, wow. And you don't look a day older than 21, Liz. It's amazing.
Very much.
How about you, Rue?
So again, childhood memories. When we lived back in Scotland, we lived at the bottom of a mountain. We had a really steep, slopey garden. And 2 really strong memories. One is Mum making a little space for me and giving me a packet of mixed flower seeds, and just that, getting my hands in the soil and the anticipation of waiting for them to pop up and then get those little spikes. I was hooked. And then growing in the back garden with my sisters, just radishes and spring onions. And I can remember we used to pull the spring onions up when they were tiny little seedlings and eat them when they were still just little shoots. So that's too many years ago for me to want to actually admit to. But actually growing on sort of an allotment or at home for about 20 years.
Yeah. Erica?
For me, really, I kind of got into gardening when I was about 7. I'm a 3rd generation female gardener for my family. So I just grew up in the back garden watching my mum doing gardening and stuff. And there was a little patch of the garden. So I was allowed that to be my little area. And I started taking cuttings, and I think I put a buddleia. I just cut a bit of buddleia and chucked it in there. And then 5 years later, it was this huge tree in the corner of the garden. When I was about 12, I learned about growing potatoes. You just needed a sprouty potato. And then I thought, wow, this is a game you can eat. And I was hooked pretty much. So yeah, a long time.
So we've all been bitten by the bug from being children, and now it's a case of we're grown up and we can put all those great things that we learn as kids into action, you know, which I just think is great. And I think if you talk to most gardeners, they will have some sort of memory from the distant past that really is quite striking, you know. However, it's never too late to start. Alan from the UK wants to know, what is the best way to get an allotment? He says he's been on the waiting list for a long time and he's number 224 out of 278. What can he do?
Okay, so I am the secretary at my allotments, and we have a very big waiting list as well, especially with lockdown. All I can suggest is that you keep in contact with your the person that you spoke to in the first place. And sometimes with allotments, they have you know, some are very, very big. We've only got 24 plots. My allotments, we're pretty small, but some of the much bigger ones that are council run actually do have a lot of vacant plots, but they're in such a state that they can't really be let. So it's worth kind of getting in contact with them and just telling them that you're interested, see if they have any work days, if there's a way you can kind of volunteer. Quite often they've got Facebook groups now, so maybe it would be worth kind of checking that out. But generally, I know that another an allotment holder quite close to me, she just went up on a Saturday until she saw somebody and just asked, you know, again, she was already on the waiting list, but she asked and they said, actually, there is one available. So it's just worth kind of keeping in with the person that's looking after that waiting list.
Absolutely, absolutely. Liz. Lorraine Phillips from Aberdeen. She says she's tried for 4 years and she can't grow butternut squash, but can grow pumpkins. Why? I'm the same. Tell me what we're doing wrong.
So I've had a hit and miss affair with butternut squash, but last 2 years I have made sure that when I've sown the seeds, I keep potting them on into larger pots. So they never, at any point, do those roots start feeling constricted before I get it into the ground. So I've done very regular potting them on into larger and larger pots. And then when I've got them in the ground, they've romped away. And I think there is something about as soon as those roots feel trapped, you're not going to get a very good plant.
That's interesting.
Maybe to sow the seeds a little later in the year so that actually it's warm enough. Once they've come up and they've got maybe 4 or 5 leaves, you can actually get them straight into the ground.
Yeah.
So you're not having to keep them in pots. So just sow them a bit later than your other marrow type and courgette type plants, and get them out straight out into the ground.
I can see, by the way, that Erica and Rue are nodding. They are agreeing with you. And that sounds absolutely brilliant because I can't do it either. I'm hoping for some this year because they're the sort of thing you do use in the kitchen a lot. And if you can't grow them, but you can grow pumpkins, I can completely see why Lorraine is frustrated. Okay, Lorraine, hope that's helped you out a little bit there. Right, Rue. Chris, lovely Chris from Exploring Nature Together over in the US has put, how do you manage indoor watering? She always does either too much or too little and ends up with mould on the top of her soil.
So I'm assuming when we say indoor, we're meaning polytunnel or greenhouse and not indoor house.
Yeah.
I'm hoping, because that's what I'm going to answer. So I've had a greenhouse and I grow an awful lot in the polytunnel. And without sounding sort of patronising, put your hands in the soil, feel the soil. You know, that's the first thing, isn't it? What does it feel and look like? I will water with a fine mist spray rather than, you know, really zhuzhing it in. And watering, you can use sort of, if you've got pots and things, using a gravel tray or watering from the bottom. You could use something like the plant halos. I think Erica's done some videos with those. So you've got a bit more regulating. Or I know some people will use plastic bottles, so they're chopping the bottom off, which then becomes the top, and you can push that down into the base of your plants and water down that. But the way I do it in the polytunnel is I make sure I've got really good ventilation. I do have a fan as well to help air circulate, and I think that's really important. And it's a case of not just doing the same thing every day, so you're adjusting what you do according to the temperature. And you can also just take into account, in a polytunnel more than a greenhouse, you get a lot of condensation at sort of in the spring and tail end. So just take that into account as well, that what you're watering is, you get that condensation, it's going to drip back down, whereas through the summer months it's evaporating and going away. So just take all those factors into account, and be careful with your soil. So I know some people use the municipal compost, but if that's come from kitchen waste and it's not been that well rotted down, you can get your spores for your mold in that. So it's where you're sourcing your compost. And then, as I say, fine mist spray. I do water twice a day. I water sort of fairly early in the morning and then in the evening as well through the hot months.
Yeah. I think it's interesting what you say about that municipal compost. I did it. I tend not to sow things into it, but things that I had potted on in it in the greenhouse, it was terrible. So now I just use it for the outside beds and basically use it like a mulch. Has anyone tried using the cinnamon on the top of compost when you sow your
No.
Cinnamon is supposed to be, it's like got antifungal qualities, and that, touch wood, has done so far. It will stop mold appearing on the top of your plant trays indoors. So worth a try, worth a try. Okay, thanks Ruth, that's great. Okay, let's have a look. Oh, it's me, right, okay. Julie Neary is experimenting with vertical gardening, and she wants to know what sort of squash, what other sorts of things you can grow vertically. And I think one of the first things I would say, Julie, is I'm assuming that you're talking about trailing plants, in which case, squash are one of your best things to do. You can use squash, you can use beans, you could use cucumbers, you could do melons, all these sorts of things, but do take into account how strong your support is. A couple of years ago, I used a rather inexpensive, I'll put it that way, metal arch and tried to grow all sorts of it, and by the end of the season it was bent. And so do beware. If you're growing peas or beans, fine, but if you are going to grow things like squash, be aware of the weight. Saying that, I would grow always, if I'm going to grow vertically, I would grow small squash. So things like, I would say, Jack be little, your small butternuts, anything like that. Tromboncino, you see quite a lot of people with the tromboncino, and they look quite spectacular hanging down. But if you are going to go for a stronger structure, so a nice wooden structure, it might be worth going over to see Cliff at Castle Hill Garden, because I don't know if you've seen, he's done an absolutely fantastic wooden frame. Every year is just swathed in squash, and it looks absolutely beautiful. Right, a question for all of us, and this is from the lovely Paul Savadon from London, and he says, what's the one thing you would always grow and one thing you would never grow again? Can I go first? Because I bet you're all going to say the same. Tomatoes, because there's nothing like that taste. You can't buy them from the shops. You cannot compare a homegrown tomato. But the one I wouldn't grow would be cucamelons. I tried them a few years ago when they sort of came out and everyone was talking about them. Lots of effort, not a lot of reward. So yeah, so that was quite quick. Who next? Liz, come on.
I will always grow squashes because they're great for storing all year round. And I will probably never grow. I don't want to say never.
I know, that's the tricky bit.
Yeah, I'm not probably would be less inclined to grow ochre again.
All right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Erica.
Potatoes are like my most favourite thing to grow. They are just the best. So yes, definitely that's my most favourite thing to grow. And then in terms of not growing again, I mean, that's a really tough one, but never say never. But I think I'll probably never grow coriander again because I don't like it.
Yeah. Okay. I'd just like to say, actually, if you don't know, Erica's actually got a potato challenge going on at the moment. So I'll put a link up and go over there, join in the potato challenge this year, which should be fun. Rue, how about you?
And so in a similar vein to your tomatoes, for me, it's cucumber. Once you eat a homegrown cucumber, anything you buy in the shop, you just bite it into watery nothing. So cucumbers, definitely always love to grow those because the taste is just amazing. And the never, it's so difficult, isn't it? Without sounding facetious, I'm going to say never because I'm a bit of it's a challenge. If I try something and I can't grow it, unless I didn't like it. So I'll always grow what I enjoy eating. So I probably never grow something I wouldn't like. And so far, everything I've tried, I've liked. So I'm a bit on the fence with that one.
Okay.
I always have a go at something, and if I can't make it grow, I will find a way of making it grow.
Yeah. I think hats off to you. I just get really cross and think, no, I've decided I don't like it anyway. So yeah, that's really good. Okay, I knew someone else would say tomatoes. That's why I got in first. Right, okay, Erica. Lovely Nick, as we call him, from Nick's Allotment, says his carrots are always stumpy and full of holes. Tips?
Okay, well, if they're full of holes, then that's because you've got a pest, either the carrot root fly, or it could be slugs. So a lot of people decide just to grow them in a kind of taller raised bed or buckets. In terms of stumpy, I mean, there are lots of different varieties of carrots, and quite often, you know, we forget what we've actually planted, and they might be growing true to the actual variety. So if you're growing one that will grow nice and long, just make sure you've got it in a nice big tall pot. And I've had amazing success this year with actually growing them over winter in my polytunnel. So I sowed them in September, and I tried to harvest a couple the other day, and they're still not ready, but they have not been touched by any pests whatsoever. So that's all I can advise, really.
Yeah. And I think the thing is I don't know if you'll all agree here, but what I would say is the carrot fly. If you can do what you can to keep the carrot fly away, as you say, grow them tall. Is it carrot fly can't fly higher than 6 inches or something?
Yeah.
Or do some companion planting, which we'll come on to later on. That's a good one. Okay, thanks, Erica. Okay, Liz. Emma Wright Cooks from Carnforth says the best way to organise succession planting to avoid gaps and have a winter garden. Quite a big question there. Come on.
It's a really big question. So I'm going to say, in all honesty, as a planner, I have paid for planners. If I'm going to do that successional planting, I think it's actually worth investing £20 for understanding how to do that planning, and whether that's through a well-known company or through someone like Hugh, who's recently brought out a vegetable garden planner. But if you invest a little bit now, you've then got a lifetime of understanding how to do that. And any of those plans will any of those planning tools will actually guide you through how long a vegetable needs to sit in the ground, and therefore a month before that or 2 weeks before that you've got to get the next lot of vegetables in. And if you want to absolutely maximize every last inch of your garden, I think they're worth investing in.
Yeah, good plan and good planner. That's the thing, if you are relying on your fruit and vegetable to feed yourselves, then you do want to be maximising space. At the moment, we're nowhere near that. Want to be as self-sufficient as we can be, but yeah, you want to maximise the most of your space. Anyone else want to add to that? Does that make sense? Makes sense to me. Good question, good answer. Rue, Govinda Smith wants to know where to get seed potatoes, because he couldn't get any in that well-known store that rhymes with Bilko's. So where would you source your potatoes?
So we don't actually have, I don't think we have one of those stores near me. So I have always traditionally bought my seed potatoes from our local independent garden centre, but things are a bit different this year.
Yeah.
I have also in the past bought them online. So I would say go online and have a look around and see what you can get. Can't really go wrong. I've actually got mine this year from another garden centre, but I bought them online. I won't bore you with how I came about finding it. It's actually a garden centre in Powys, I think. And I have bought some other things from them.
Powys?
Powys, yeah. So, yeah, down mid Wales, mid Wales.
I thought you were very exotic there, Rue. Yes.
I know. So, but what I really liked about them is, again, they are an independent garden centre, and I actually ordered online on their website, but because there was a couple of issues, they rang me and chatted to me. Now, you're not going to get that with your big online places like the one that begins with A. So I would suggest, if at the moment we can't get out to places, but ring round or go online and look at your local garden centres, the independent ones, because you're going to get more help and guidance there. But go online, shop around, and if you really can't get hold of seed potatoes, get yourself some supermarket spuds, get those chitted and get those in, so at least you've got some potatoes in. But yeah, independent sort of garden centres around you, give them a ring or go online. Lots of them have a website, or chuck some supermarket spuds in.
Oh, this one, I had to actually look this one up. This is a question from Elena Fowler. First half I knew, do you top your onions at 10 to 12 weeks? Yes. And the reason we do, it's controversial. We chop ours because then the energy tends to go back into the roots for a while, helps to thicken the roots, more leaves, more layers of the onion. So I would recommend you do that. But the part of the question I didn't quite understand, but then realised that we did it, was she asked if we spoon our onions. Now, when I looked it up, what that actually means is when you've got your onion in the ground and it's starting to grow, sort of when it's taken a good hold, you actually just use a spoon or whatever, choose your fingers, depending on your soil, to remove that top layer of soil around to allow your onion to expand and grow into the space around it. You know, you don't want to do it too much, and you don't want to expose the roots or anything. But we actually had a really, really poor crop of onions last year. Oh, that's one thing I was quite upset about it. But our garlic as well, I was impatient to get it in, and I ended up basically just shoving it in quite hard ground. We're doing no dig, but it takes a while for your layers to build up. And we ended up with really misshapen garlic cloves or garlic bulbs because they just hadn't had room to expand, bless them. So I will be making sure this year with my garlic and my onions that the ground is nice and soft, completely the opposite to brassicas. The ground is nice and soft, and it will give them some chance to fill it. Anyone else heard about spooning their onions?
I've heard of it before, but I've not done it, to be honest. That was what I did say. Rue.
And I just imagined them having a little spoon.
A little cuddle. Yeah, that was my first thought, which is quite nice. It's a nice thought, but also
not helpful.
Okay, I think we're coming to the end of this first part here, but we've got a great question here for just to round up this half, and this one is for Carissa Troop. Forgive me if I got your name wrong, Carissa. I know I've spoken to you loads of times online, but I've never actually pronounced your name before. And she asks, what do you all dream of eating when you plant it? One thing. And it's a bit like trying to choose your favourite thing. So she says, For example, you know, your first asparagus, your first tomato. I'll let someone else go first this time. Liz.
Oh, purple sprouting broccoli every year, because it takes so long from sowing those seeds to harvesting. So, you know, you're planting, putting those seeds in March or April, and you know that it's going to be a good 12 months before you're standing there thinking, come on, be ready.
And do you actually pick it up off the plant? Do you eat it off the plant? Because I tend to do that. Yeah, you got it. Erica.
Garlic. I really absolutely love having the first taste of garlic. It's just amazing.
Yeah. Again, and fresh garlic. It's so different to what you get in the shops. It's just, yeah. You can't explain it unless you do. You've just got to go out there and do it, haven't you? Rue.
Parsnips. I love a roast dinner, and I love my Christmas dinner. And again, it's homegrown again, isn't it? But I just dream of those roasted, drizzled with some honey. Oh, can't beat them.
Fantastic. Well, I've got two, but I've got to choose one. But I'm going to say two. Tomatoes, obviously, because as I mentioned before, you don't get the same flavour in the shop. But the one I'm really looking forward to, and I have been looking forward to for years and years and years, but we'll only get our first ones this year, is the asparagus. Because we put off planting it for so long, thinking, oh, it's going to take 2 or 3 years to come to fruition. And then eventually, a few years ago, we thought, oh, why don't we just stick it in and see what happens? And this year will be the first year that we're able to actually pick one from the plant. And I cannot wait. It might be one of the things that I actually take some butter up to the allotment and get it on the little gas stove and eat it there and then. So yeah, looking forward to that. Okay, well, I think actually our brains must all be buzzing. I'm hoping that we've given some really good answers there to those first questions that we've got. And what we do now, I hope you've enjoyed this, because we're going to finish this half now and say a little goodbye, but then we're going to come back for part 2 and treat you to the rest of the questions then. Thank you.